All right, everybody. You know, this segment's really not going to help my case when it comes to the accusations that I'm a bit of a shit stirrer, but I saw this go down on Twitter, and I just felt, regardless of what consequences and drama may arise from me talking about this and giving my opinion, I felt very responsible to talk about it, if that makes sense, right? Like, I felt like I have almost a responsibility to give my input, because if you guys know my backstory, then you know that I'm a little bit qualified to talk about this particular thing. So, we're going to start with a little bit of background, a little bit of a more recent, sort of event, okay? So someone posted this video saying hilarious crossover, and it's a clip of content creator Ludwig reacting to like iDubbbz or something. Basically, it's talking about like content creators and their responsibility for their audience. Let's watch.
It was someone saying least egotistical content creator, and it was in response to Sans saying this. Absolutely responsible for your audience and what they're saying and doing and what's happening in different discords and stuff. You have to. No one else can be. You are the mother that birthed that audience, right? They are a reflection of you. It makes me sick to think of like what you guys might say and do in other channels. That's why I'm like very strict here, right? And then I think the take from this person, homosexual, was least egotistical creator, because it's very egotistical to think that you have that much of a command over another human. So I think that's where the ego comes in. You know, you are one of many creators that people consume. You don't have that much of an impact. What I view it as is like inaction births action. So this person's take was you are not responsible for your audience unless you tell them to do something. So like, hey, let's go hate raid Pokey, like that Gideon clip from back in the day. But I think if we're talking about Chris Mr. Beast and a bunch of people in my chat start saying, Chris, you yuck Dan's game, or saying maybe more outwardly transphobic shit, and I do nothing about it, then it's kind of like a safe space for that type of rhetoric. And that can, but I fundamentally agree with.
And they cut it off right there. The clip cuts off there. So people are kind of upset that Ludwig is siding with, iDubbbz and actually agreeing with the concept of, like, you should have some level of, like, audience moderation, you know? Like, you probably shouldn't allow bigotry to be, like, rampant in your audience, because that's going to influence your audience to see that as good behavior that they're going to replicate, outside of your audience and outside of your sphere, where you may have made it sort of a acceptable thing where it's like, oh, everyone knows the joke, everyone knows it's good here, but, maybe not outside of your community. Willie Mac Show, who was the one who tweeted that, by the way, and that Ludwig was responding to, ends up replying to that clip saying the bearing. Oh, sorry. I'll show my screen. The bearing of that sentence is that there's people that hold creators responsible for a minority of their audience doing bad things. Like Nikocado blaming Charlie for harassment even though Charlie said not to harass, or PewDiePie for the Christchurch shooting, or iDubbbz for saying his own fans were saying N-word F-slur out loud in public. I like how it goes from content creator who criticized someone and told their audience not to harass, someone who had nothing to do with a terror attack other than being mentioned by the shooter, because the shooter wanted to connect themselves with PewDiePie and drum up, like, more media controversy. And then finally, somebody who directly made videos arguing why it's okay to say slurs and why you should say them more, because if you say them more, you take power from them, and it's actually anti-racist to say slurs. There's a very, blatant political lean here, I feel. But yeah, with that said, though, I want to talk about something that's related to this, okay? I want to talk about how a lot of creators, left and right, have a really hard time with this idea of, like, this prospect of their content having an influence in their audience. And if they do accept that their content has an influence on their audience, or that their beliefs, the values they exhibit in their content has an influence in their audience, then they try to argue that it can't be the only influence, or that if it did influence them to a degree that's bad, then they have a parasocial relationship and it's not their fault. How many times have you seen content creators just desperate to try to argue that their content has no impact on people, that in a way that should be representative of them, if they know about that and they don't, admit it or do anything about it, right? A lot of you guys are going to start giving examples, Shu and whatnot, yeah. In particular today, we're going to be talking about someone who I like a lot, okay? Someone who I'm friends with still. And I hope to continue to be friends with even after this video. And I do hope that this video, I don't know, if he sees it, maybe he'll, reconsider some things. But if he doesn't reconsider some things, maybe he'll want to have a convo about it in private or public. I mean, I think it would be an awesome, public convo about this topic with the person in question. Like, holy shit, would this convo be awesome to do publicly? I think a lot of you guys would love to, hear me and this person talk about this topic, because, I'll explain in a moment. But I'd be fine to have the convo in private, too. The person in question is Chris Ray Gun. Okay? I like Chris Ray Gun a lot. However, for those that don't know, Chris Ray Gun was my entry into the skeptic anti-SJW YouTube sphere. If you go back to my videos I've made about my journey into the alt-right pipeline and how I got out, you can see, that was where it started. Shortly after Trump's election, I found myself kind of just in sort of a political doomer zone, and I ended up giving one of his videos a try. It had the title alt-righty then, and I started down the sort of rabbit hole of anti-SJW content. And from him, I discovered Shoe on Head and Sargon, and you just go down the pipeline from there. And while Chris Ray Gun's current politics and his current arguments and his current messaging are really good, I don't think there's anything wrong with anything he says now. Recently, and for a while now, but notably recently, because this came up, he seems to be very opposed to the idea that whether or not he meant to, his audience could have influenced people down a road that led them towards bigotry or towards the far right. Chris Ray Gun's very, very much not willing to accept that idea. He really wants to shrug off, not really responsibility. Responsibility sounds like too harsh of a word, I don't feel like Chris Ray Gun needs to take responsibility. That sounds so pretentious and morally aggrandizing. It's not even responsibility. I think it's more so just it's frustrating that he just doesn't say, oh yeah, that might have happened, I guess it's really just that simple. Let me explain. This all started just a couple days ago when someone on Twitter posted this. I'm pretty sure this person's not great. I was told this Twitter user is not a great person, but regardless, they posted this. They got blocked by Shoe on Head based, and they replied, "Y'all, I'm actually so hyped. This is hilarious. This woman indoctrinated me as a minor into being an anti-SJW. I watched her content as a child and became further bigoted than I already was from my environment. She probably had this effect on thousands of children." I'll admit, this post is not the best wording of the argument. If I was to make the argument that this person's trying to make, it could definitely be worded better. I was one too, a pillow in chat. I definitely think there's truth to that argument, but I think it could be worded better, So Chris Ray Gun ends up quote tweeting that tweet. And this is what inspired me to make this segment, okay? Chris Ray Gun quote tweets it, and he goes on to say, "How is it that me and my friends watched the edgiest shit possible growing up and entered adulthood without a seething disdain for black people or a hatred of gays? Could it be that personal responsibility plays a huge part in the things we think and believe? It's weird how many people outwardly say, yeah, I was a raging anti-Semite, but in my defense, I watched some YouTubers once and expect that to be a sufficient reason." A lot of people in chat are going to be upset at Chris for tweeting that because, ironically enough, it's so cringe, and it gives so much leeway to conservative rhetoric that it almost circles around into woke scold talking points. It's like Chris is reaching out and shaking hands with the woke scolds right now on the argument that no, propaganda doesn't make you racist. Okay. Let me explain. Chris Ray Gun's content was not propaganda. Chris Ray Gun's content was basically commentary that is meant to be entertainment and humor-based. You're just supposed to get laughs out of it with a political leaning. He centered his content around discussing politics and things happening in politics, but it was a time where politics was so volatile and so drama-filled that it wasn't just people who were super invested in politics talking about it. And so Chris Ray Gun and Sean Head and the people that Chris definitely shouted out and collabed with made content that wasn't necessarily conservative propaganda, but it started you off into a community of people that ended in conservative propaganda. And there's so many people who've said they started off with Shu or Chris's content and ended up in far-right propaganda, so many young people. And it's so bizarre to me that there hasn't been any self-reflection there. That there's been so many people in their early 20s who are like, yeah, when I was a teenager, like, I started off on your content and ended up at white nationalism, you know? Like, I followed the yellow brick road from that start, and that's where I ended up, you know? And I'm not expecting you to get on your knees and fucking, I'm sorry I'm white! I'm sorry I'm male! I'm sorry I'm white! I'm sorry I'm male! I don't expect you to do that or anything. I'm not expecting you to do that or anything, but it does feel weird, disrespectful, to try to deny that it happened at all. And to not only deny that it happened at all, but to on top of that claim, no. The fact that you were radicalized into far-right beliefs is your fault. You were not responsible enough to, like, maintain your own ideals, despite being exposed to this shit. And it's like, Chris, I love you, buddy, but do you think people are born racist? Like, what do you think Hitler Youth was? I'm not saying your content was Hitler Youth or anything, but, like, the whole idea of bigotry is that it's taught. People are taught this kind of stuff. And even if you weren't the one teaching it, I'm not saying you were the one teaching it, you were the start to a massive group of people's journey into being taught that. And it sucks that you won't, like, admit it. And the crazy thing is, it feels like Chris knows. It feels slightly dishonest. And that's what bothers me as well. It feels slightly dishonest, and I'll get into that in a moment. Someone quote tweeted Chris's tweet, saying, not Chris the Ray Gun downplaying the influence influencers, quote unquote, have on children while they're growing plus learning. I was blatantly racist online because of shit you said. Least you can do is admit that you planted those seeds in my head, bruv. I hate that so many of these people are so bad at, like, framing their argument, because it's like, Chris, what you said planted the seeds that made me racist. And it's like, no. That's not how it works. Jesus, learn to word this better. Like, I just, it's really frustrating because they're not very good at wording it. What Chris did, and I'm about to get into that in a moment, is made content that was part of a broad community push against this idea of SJWs. And that started people down a massive rabbit hole of getting into nicher and nicher far-right content creators that push their opinions further than even Chris would agree is, like, acceptable, right? And that is the problem, right? And the reason I think that Chris's position here is a bit dishonest is because I feel like he knows. I just Googled, or I just YouTubed up Social Justice the Musical, and a lot of the episodes are either unlisted or privated because several of the videos are not coming up. Like the Come Be PC one is a re-upload, and the Punch a Nazi one's a re-upload. The only one that's coming up as public is Ain't No Rest for the Triggered. So I'm gonna use one of the the Social Justice the Musical videos from back in the day as an example of, like, what kind of impact this kind of stuff had. For those that don't know, this video was a pretty big viral video. I mean, I had this shit playing on repeat when I was a teenager, okay? This tune is going to be stuck in my head for weeks after this, and it has been stuck in my head for a long time. Like, let's watch this really quickly. Okay, let's just watch a little bit of this song. This was a collaboration between Rucka Ali and Chris Ray Gun.
I'm on the streets, I'm so smart, You're about the president. You're a white supremacist.
Oh my god, even the black guy's a white supremacist. So, like, I'm not going to play any more of the song, okay? But I'll clip through, like, a few bits of it. We got, like, the... Where's the... Yeah, we got the Antifa dudes. We got... Here we've got, This part really didn't age well because we've got a bunch of people here who are labeled as Nazis that are supposed to be falsely labeled as Nazis. And most of these people aren't Nazis on the list, but a few of them ended up being Nazis. So this part of the video didn't really age all that well. But I feel like that's actually a perfect framing of it, right? This is Lauren Southern here, for example. You know, the Great Replacement conspiracy spreader. You've got Dave Rubin here, and you've got fucking... I don't even know who this is supposed to be. Is that Bunty? I think this is supposed to be Bunty King. I don't even know. Yeah. I think this is Shu. This is TJ, who's not a Nazi. Is this Mr. Repsion? This could be Chris. But it could also be Mr. Repsion, who did make conservative-ish content, like anti-SJW type stuff. Kekistani insurgents. Like, okay. This is not racist propaganda. This is not bigoted... It could be iDubbbz, you're right. This is not, like, bigot propaganda. This is not far-right propaganda. But do you understand how somebody stumbling across this viral video as a teenager might have their minds open to a whole new world of conservative rhetoric about how the left has gone too far? And, like, I don't even know, like... There was also, and I know this one's taken down. I know this one's taken down. And I know Chris has actually responded to this one in the past. And this is the part that makes me like, come on, man. You can't, you know that there was some iffy stuff with your old content. And that is, in the Ain't No Rest for the Triggered one, listen, Chris, both your music taste and your singing are great, all right? And I know, and he's responded to this. He's like, acknowledge this next bit you're about to see, okay? He has denounced this next bit you're about to see. He does not stand by what you're about to see. Chris Ray Gun is not transphobic. I'm prefacing this very strongly. This is not a hit piece video. This is me talking about something that is close to my heart, that has relevance to another content creator, that may be seen as drama baiting to people, but this is just me talking about something that is important to me because it has to do a lot with my political evolution and how I got to where I am now. You know, my job is politics. How I got to where I am politically is a relevant aspect of my life, right? So with that said, he does not stand by what you are about to see now. But I think it's important to show this as a little bit of a reference to how iffy not only was his old content, but the era of political content creation he was contributing to was. Here we go.
I was fast, I'm walking up to my front door, but from my peripheral vision I could see that a man, he dropped his keys, and like a gymnast on trapeze, I called from in midair and said, so you drop these. He turned around in pure disgust, and I'm not even a man, I'm a by gender girl with manly tendencies. I said, okay, sir, whatever, and he called up the police. Now I'm serving 6 to 10 because I didn't disagree. Oh, there ain't no rest for the trigger. Where easily displeased.
Banger of a song. Still a banger, okay? And it's going to be stuck. I'm going to be humming that in the shower, like, tonight. But do you understand how when your media diet, and let's be honest, Zoomers' media diet is just internet shit. Zoomers do not watch TV. Zoomers do not read the newspaper. Zoomers do not, like, watch movies. Zoomers watch internet shit, okay? When you're a Zoomer whose entire media diet is internet shit, and now you're getting into internet politics, and viral videos like that are, like, the first thing you see, and are probably some of the first actual political engagement you're having in your life, where else can you end up? All of the most prominent creators involved in politics that they could end up getting into after you are all the conservative and even far-right figures that go down and down the pipeline, right? Like, where is somebody going to end up after they find shoe on head other than Lauren Southern if they're looking to get further into that side of politics, right? There's nowhere else to end up, especially back then. There was really no prominent, like, overtly progressive left-wing creators. It's just, you can only go right from there if you're going through, like, by popular creators, right? So it's like, this is not something that Chris Ray Gun's responsible for. He doesn't need to take responsibility. He doesn't need to take accountability. I'm not trying to cancel him. I just, at the end of the day, I don't even, it's not even important if he watches the video and changes his mind. I more so just wanted to give my thoughts on this, because I think it's interesting how many people who make content are this opposed to recognizing or admitting that their content reasonably can influence their audience. He ended up quote tweeting the tweet that I previously read that quote tweeted him, and he said, "I'm sorry that I made you racist. I didn't realize the butterfly effect I would have had when I called manspreading silly or when I called Ghostbusters 2016 kind of cringe. I'm so truly sorry, and I hope you can find it in your cold, racist heart to forgive me." So he starts, like, turning it around on the people who are criticizing him, which, you know, fair enough. But it's like, you weren't just calling the Ghostbusters 2016 movie cringe. You were making videos about how the left has gotten really, you know, insane these days because they call everything Nazi, and Nazi has literally lost its meaning now because everybody who disagrees with the SJWs is a Nazi now. So when you hear someone's a Nazi, you just immediately assume that they're just a normal person. Like, there was the, oh no, oh god, there was the clip of Richard Spencer and the people Sieg Heiling him, and you were like, yeah, I guess that's kind of creepy. Like, even when it was blatantly Nazi shit, you were afraid to call that Nazi stuff because it was such a faux pas to even, like, criticize something from a progressive standpoint back then. And I think you know that. And I think you knew that. And you've made that TikTok recently. You know there's money in it, too, because you made that TikTok recently about how you got reached out to by shady, like, conservative money organizations asking you to push the conservative party line in exchange for millions. And it's obvious who, you know, denied that deal and who took it. I know you're a good guy, Chris. I know you're not like some conservative propagandist mouthpiece. I know you're somebody who thinks with his own brain and has his own opinions and believes his own shit, which is why it's so disappointing to me that effectively the right, like people like Richard Spencer even said that content creators like you and Dave Rubin were very useful on inroads to the alt-right. They literally would call you a useful idiot for their, like, propaganda, and you deny that that was a thing. And it's like, when Nazis say that your, like, content was a useful tool for their recruitment, it's like, who else do you need to ask? You've got, like, ex-fans who say, yeah, your content led me down a bad road. You've got Nazis who said your type of content can lead, like, to people getting onboarded. You've got the left claiming that your content could lead to people being onboarded. Do you really need to hear about it, like, hear that from anyone else to think, like, okay, maybe, you know, maybe maybe some of my old content played into an era of political messaging that influenced people in a direction I am not proud to have influenced people into, right? That's really all it takes, right? I mean, hell, I made a whole video. Like, I am somebody who has started my entire online career as a lefty political figure with multiple videos breaking down how I was radicalized into bigotry, okay? It is known by... My biggest video is about how once I was a bigot. I never get to claim that I've always been this squeaky clean, morally pure, woke, lefty, whatever. I never get to claim that because my biggest, most known video ever is me saying, hey guys, I was racist, transphobic, and bigoted once. Here's me talking about how it happened and how I stopped. Like, I never get to get that, like, plausible, like, deniability of that. Everybody knows that about me, you know? Like, there's so many people who've come out with stories about that. I think it's worth acknowledging, you know, like, in some way. I don't know. I found it disappointing when I saw those tweets. TJ was capable of it, so was iDubbbz. Yeah, but like at the same time, I will say if Chris Ray Gun did anything even close to what iDubbbz did, he would be getting the same treatment as iDubbbz. That's just how it is, you know? It'd be pretty rough. So, like, at the same time, I also kind of understand why he's a little bit defensive, because if he does accept that, like, he will just immediately be on the shit list of, like, the entire drama and EdgeTube community in a heartbeat. Like, he'll be getting, like, 10 times more harassment on Twitter in a heartbeat. If he says, yeah, okay, maybe my yeah. If he says that on Twitter publicly, it'll get quote tweeted, ratioed, he'll get a ton of shit. So I can understand the desire for self-preservation, but still. Xan is morally interesting. All good characters are morally complex. Well, like, okay. The reason why... God, this is why I want to talk to Chris so much. The reason why so many people in, like, this, like, my generation were able to be radicalized into racism is because they were convinced that racism wasn't racist. That's literally it. At the end of the day, they were unironically convinced that racism isn't racist. They don't, like, most of the people who get radicalized in this shit don't think they're being racist or bigoted. And when they find out that they are, that's what snaps them out of it. How many of you were chuds at one point, and it was when you realized, wait, hold on, I'm a bigot. Just the fact that you realized you are a bigot and you're not, like, some big brain logic bro, like, 4D chess player, but you're actually just straight up falling for bigoted propaganda, that was what snapped you out of it. So much of this propaganda, and we saw in the comment section of the quartering video that one guy who genuinely seems to not be racist, talking about how maybe the failure of the Little Mermaid movie will open up more opportunity for original stories about black main characters. Like, that person does not think they're racist, and yet probably their entire media diet is anti-SJW, like anti-woke, about how anything that has minorities in it is woke garbage. I just realized one day I was the one being a snowflake anti-SJW. Yeah, that's a big part of it too. The anti-SJW started to be the snowflakes, and that's a large part, in large part, when Chris got off board with that stuff. But yeah,